Fox News alert now. Right now, at this moment, the funeral for Alexei Navalny is underway. Reporters and their allies paying their respects to Putin's fiercest critic, who died last month in a Siberian prison. Meanwhile, Vladimir Putin throwing down the gauntlet over Ukraine, saying the West will face a nuclear conflict if they put troops in to help Ukraine.
Strategic nuclear forces are in a state of full readiness for use. We remember the fate of those who sent their contingents to the territory of our country. Now the consequences for the potential interventionists will be much more tragic.
Here to react, Fox News senior strategic analyst, retired four-star General Jack Keane. General, he loves talking about nuclear war every 6 weeks. To me, this is in response to what Macron said of France, that maybe NATO should put some troops in there to help out the Ukrainians. What do you think the big picture is?
Yeah, well, I think Putin continues to brandish the use of nuclear weapons because it works. I mean, it's the reason why the Biden administration took a knee on not providing advanced weapons when the Ukrainians began to ask for them in the first year of the war. It's because the policymakers feared Russian escalation. That's the reality that we're facing. So that kind of worked. Why wouldn't he keep brandishing it? Of course he's going to do it. And what they would fear about Macron's statement about providing troops, quote unquote, he would fear French air power. The F-16s are coming to Ukraine this year. Hopefully, if Congress approves the funding, Europeans will be providing them as well. And that's going to begin to be a game changer and make Russian ground forces very vulnerable, and also military targets in Crimea very vulnerable.
Some small-minded people are saying this is a Ukraine problem, but we're already seeing indications that Russia is going to do the same thing in the Baltics and in Moldova. They find Russian-speaking people in these countries, say they have to help them out, they provide protections, and they take it. Now, a breakaway region of Moldova has asked out for Russian help. They have never left Georgia. They've taken 18% of Ukraine. And you say that there's movements now inside the Baltic states. This threat of Russian expansion is more than real. It's not conjured up. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Putin is dead set on breaking the transatlantic alliance, not necessarily with a full-out invasion across the border and rush for the capitals of the Baltics. We played those in war games, and that's really tough for us to deal with. But more likely, the hybrid warfare that he exposed to the world in annexing Crimea, where a false narrative, his Spetsnaz go in, stirs up a population of Russian minorities, a false narrative. There is no unrest, but they create this unrest, and they ask for assistance to stabilize the situation because the government is contributing to that unrest. In other words, the host government in the country. And in came Russian forces to stabilize them. Remember, they didn't have any Russian identification on them. We refer to as little green men, that kind of facade that they went through. But they're setting that condition in Transnistria, part of Moldova, and also in the Baltics. There was a release in the German media just recently, a few weeks ago, a classified document produced by their intelligence services that indicate Russia was fully setting the conditions in the Baltics to do the very same thing he did in Crimea in 2014. Putin is dead set on expanding beyond Ukraine into NATO countries, to bring those countries back in Eastern Europe into the Russian Empire. And why do we know that, or how do we know that? He keeps telling us this. As he told us,
no secret.
He was very concerned about Ukraine, and he wanted to bring it back into the Russian Empire. Let's take him at his word, and let's respond accordingly.
And I think Republicans should understand that and forget about who the president is or not is, and just focus on what's best for the country. Our past is prologue. People should go to school on this. And I think some of these people are standing up. It's just because it's President Biden, but they have to know the right thing to do is to stand up to Russia. It's in our best interest. General, thanks so much.
Yeah, you guys have a great weekend. Thank you.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.